Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation, right here, TWT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Boy, we got a crazy show tonight. Or this afternoon, I should say. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. We got the good, we got the bad, and then we got the ugly. Very interesting. Hopefully, we're loud enough in the mic. So let's see here. Let me check my audio here. It's a little low, so let me come back and let me fix that real quick, and then we're gonna go and get into the stories because it's gonna be a great show. So just give me 1 second here for my audio. All right. All right. I think we're good. Might be a little loud now, but at least it's not as quiet as it was before. Anyway, so boy, do we got a show for you guys today. Let me get my camera back here. We have. You know what? Let me just get into it because I started a couple minutes late because there was so much going on and my computer decided to be super slow. So let's go and let's just dive into it. Start off with the bad. And then we're going to get to some good, and then we're going to go back to bad. Lovely. That's just what's going on today. It's that kind of day. Okay. Now, Reuters is reporting that Justice Anthony Kennedy will be retiring. Anthony Kennedy, of course, is a big swing vote. He is the so-called conservative moderate justice. So he's ruled on favor of, for example, the ACA. He ruled on favor of in favor of gay rights in the Obergefell case. So he is, like I said, he is the court's swing vote, sometimes siding with conservatives, sometimes siding with the liberal justices who are now badly outnumbered. Well, his retirement comes at a really bad time. Now, first, let me give you some details. His retirement will take effect on July 31st, so that is coming up very soon. He is the second oldest justice in the court, next to, of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is 85. Oh, boy. Now, in a statement, he said, "It's been the greatest honor and privilege to serve our nation in the federal judiciary for the last 43 years. 30 of those are on the Supreme Court." Now, the statement issued by the court said that Kennedy's decision was motivated by him wanting to spend more time with his family. Again, he's 82 years old, so it kind of makes sense. However, this comes at a disastrous time because now that opens up the court it opens up the president to replace him. President Trump. Oh, fuck, here we go. Oh, shit. So, look, we're going to have another Trump appointment on the court. It would be, obviously, we have Neil Gorsuch already, which has proven to be an absolute disaster. And now Trump's going to have a second chance at putting up somebody who is incredibly conservative. Now, look, Kennedy, for all of his faults, was a moderate. Sometimes he sided with liberals. You think he's going to be replaced by somebody who's going to side with liberals ever? No, of course not. So this is going to be an absolute disaster for the next 30, 40 years. We are fucked for generations when it comes to cases on the Supreme Court. So it's not going to be good. Man. So already we have Republican control of Congress, Republican control of the White House, and now Republican control of the judiciary, as well as Republican control in a lot of states. That is not good. That is disastrous, and the kind of damage that they're going to do, and they're already doing, is going to be felt for decades to come. So this is not good news. I wish I could find some sort of silver lining in this, but there is not. Now, look, there are a lot of people that are weirdly enough, I'm watching Twitter, And there are people already blaming Jill Stein and Susan Sarandon. Fuck off. Look, this is a disaster, but it wouldn't have been a disaster if we had, I don't know, the most popular politician in America, Bernie Sanders, somebody who pulled double digits ahead of Trump consistently, actually be the Democratic nominee. And we wouldn't have had this disaster. But unfortunately, hindsight seems to be 2020, and the damage is already done. Maybe if we hadn't have had an incredibly conservative Democrat who was taking big money from giant corporations and represented wealthy interests as the Democratic nominee, somebody who did not poll well against Trump, if they had actually won, if they didn't do that and put up somebody who's a populist progressive, who wouldn't be in this situation. But there are people that instead want to blame Susan Sarandon and Jill Stein for this, which I think is ridiculous. And it doesn't really do anything at this point. Hey, get out of 2016. We're in 2018 now, and we have serious problems. And actually, we need to move forward and figure out how to at least keep our fundamental rights intact. So head in the game, eyes forward. We got to figure out how to beat this and how to, move forward with some sort of progress. So as far as this goes, as I said, this is not a good day for the Supreme Court. We're going to have to figure out a way to move forward, and it's going to be a little bit tough. Just keeping it real. Okay. Let me give you some good news, though, that's going to try to balance that out somewhat. All right. So last night, there were a bunch of different states that held primaries. Now, in those primary elections, there were a lot of actually progressive wins. Now, for example, we have the most famous story, a 28-year-old teacher and server, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She defeated 10-term incumbent Joe Crowley by an incredible margin. Now, Crowley is part of the establishment, of course, took money from big corporations, I should say, and health insurance companies, while saying, no, I'm for Medicare for all. After, our internal polling suggested that maybe I should move to the left on some of these issues. Now, am I actually going to be for Medicare for all? Well, I don't know what's in Joe Crowley's head, but I do know what was in his pocket, and it was money from the health insurance companies. So, nonetheless, that was not enough to stave off the powerhouse that was Ocasio-Cortez. And I say powerhouse because she was not very well known. And yet, what she did is that she took a disadvantage. No media coverage. The Intercept covered her a lot, but it was one of the only outlets. Very few outlets. The Young Turks, of course, covered her race. But mainstream media, they ignored her. The establishment, they ignored it. All of this. So she had very big disadvantages. In fact, she was outraised 10-1 and outspent by Crowley 14-1. Now, she was able to overcome that advantage because she knocked on doors and actually got people excited to go out and vote. Now, when the race was called, she told supporters, quote, "You have to give this country hope." Or you have given this country hope, sorry. "You've given this country proof that when you knock on your neighbor's door, when you come to them with love, when you let them know that no matter your stance, you are there for them, that we can make change." And we're going to need all the change that we can make going forward if we're actually going to take the country back. Now, there were other wins other than Ocasio-Cortez, who I'll get into details in another segment. Last night in Virginia, the former head of the NAACP, Ben Jealous, won his primary as well. And he ran on what they called an uncompromisingly left position inspired by Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, that includes closing corporate tax loopholes, shrinking prisons, legalizing and taxing marijuana. So the marijuana discussion, I keep saying, It'll be legal within the next 10 years. It actually might come a little bit sooner, with no help from the federal government, unfortunately. Now, the establishment, they hate those positions. So according to the Washington Post, many top state Democratic officials are concerned that those positions will be too far to the left to win in a general election. I'm sorry, have you read a poll at all? I mean, do you even know what Democratic voters actually want? Medicare for All scores 60% among everybody, 46% among Republicans, over 70% among Democrats. Do you even know your base? No, of course they don't, because they're not interested in the base. They were always interested in corporate money, their donors. Now, Jealous and his supporters said, no, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do something radical. We're going to run an uncompromisingly left message because we believe that will actually draw numbers of Democrats to the polls. See, establishment Democrats have this weird idea that, oh, no, what we need to do is that we need to go and try to attract suburban white Republican voters. Now, you can do that, and it has not been effective, and we've seen that in elections over and over and over again. But Democrats, that's a good Freudian slip. Democrats in the establishment think, no, that's a great idea. We need to tack over to them so we can get the votes. But you're ignoring your base. Oh, yeah, we don't care about the base. Come on, man. Look, ignoring your base is why you lose all the time, because a Republican voter is still very likely to vote for a Republican. And it's been proven over and over and over and over again. It's so incredibly sad. Now, look, it's not just Ben Jealous in Virginia. There are actually more wins in Virginia. For example, Corey McRae beat an incumbent, Nathaniel McFadden. Mary Washington beat Senator John Carter of Conway. Now, by the way, he chairs the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. That's a very important position. You also have Antonio Hayes defeating Senator Barbara Robinson. Now, a lot of these are younger, more progressive candidates that are beating entrenched establishment Democrats. That's very important. Another one is State Delegate Joseph Valario, who is a longtime lawmaker who chairs the House Judiciary Committee, and Jimmy Tarlow were also ousted by challengers from within their party, along with State Senator Mac Middleton, chair of the Senate Finance Committee. So you have these very important establishment Democrats in entrenched positions that are being defeated by young, progressive challengers, oftentimes with no money and very little name recognition. That is super relevant. Now we've got another progressive win. In Colorado, Emily Sirota won her primary against a well-funded establishment candidate. Now, Sirota got about 53% of the vote in early tallies and had raised hundreds of dollars in small donations from individual donors. Now, her opponent, Wheeland, a former senior policy and political director for Planned Parenthood Votes Colorado, got $20,000 in donations in June from Planned Parenthood. Now, that pushed her money into triple digits. Turns out, yes, money is very, very helpful because what money does is that it helps you get out your message. But money isn't always the only indicator of if you're going to win a race. So that's very important. Now, Sirota will face GOP winner Robert Jude Lane in November in the general election. So, now look, as far as Planned Parenthood goes, they do great work, and I do support the work that they do, but they are establishment. And most likely, just like Emily's List, who also does great work, tends to back the more established candidate in many cases. Not in every case, of course. Sometimes they will back a progressive challenger. It all depends, and it gets really gray, and you have to go into nuance and detail, et cetera, et cetera. But thankfully, the candidates, which of course, look, if you're not backed by Planned Parenthood or Emily's List and you're a progressive, well, you're still really progressive and you're still great on women's issues. So it's just that they choose somebody who they think is likely more able to win, or in this case, Whelan was a policy and political director for Planned Parenthood, votes Colorado. So that was a personal connection. They did work, so they did their endorsement based off that. Emily Sirota is actually also greatly progressive on women's issues. So I think she's going to be a great candidate. So we'll see how she does in November. Now, not every progressive running won their primaries. That's obvious. There are some great progressives that didn't win. We've had some wins. We've had some losses, right? Now, overall, though, it's actually a really, really good night last night mostly because of the win of Ocasio-Cortez. Why? It's because the establishment, that was one race they didn't see coming. They didn't even consider that the possibility that the fourth largest, highest ranking Democrat in the House could lose to somebody who had no money and no name recognition, and who came out of nowhere. It's just a regular person. Crowley was a very, very big fundraising powerhouse, but at the end of the day, he got crushed. Now, look, part of that is, I said name recognition, right? But name recognition also something that Crowley kind of lacked a little bit. And the reason is he wasn't in his community. He wasn't very well known by his own district because he was spending all of his time doing fundraisers. Now, Ocasio-Cortez, she was a member of that community. She knocked on doors. She got to know people. She spent time with the community and not with prospective donors. And I think that that's the future. That is how you win. Now, I've had a lot of discussions with some certain people, even hosts that I respect very much deeply and I agree with on a lot of issues. They, however, believe that taking over the party with primaries is kind of a fool's effort. That it's not going to do anything. Oh, it's useless. Well, they're never going to change. So why should we even try? We should be building a third party. Well, look, I kind of disagree with that. Partly, and let me explain why. I think we do need a third party. I think we need a fourth, fifth, and sixth party. However, what we need to do is, right now, the party system, the two-party system is so out of whack and has so much control over our electoral politics that there needs to be some serious fundamental change before we can make a third, fourth, fifth, or sixth party viable. Now, that involves both pressure from within and without. So, yeah, you want to go build a third party? That's great. That's fine, and that'll give you external pressure. But what we need is inside. And saying that, no, the inside strategy is not going to work is as ridiculous as saying that the outside strategy is going to work. Both need to work in tandem. Look, the notion that we can't go and infiltrate and take over the party from the inside relies on the notion that we hope to change the minds of the party leadership to be more progressive. And that is a false assumption. Instead, what we're trying to do is we're trying to replace the party leadership. It's a hostile takeover. We're the pirate ship, and we want to hijack the party away from the neoliberals, away from the establishment. It's not playing nice with the establishment. It's actually doing something that's far more scary to them than a third-party challenge. And that's coming and taking them out on their own territory, on their own turf. And victories like last night, and the 40% plus win rate for groups like Our Revolution, and the surging of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, are actually proof that we have the power to hijack that ship and win. That's not going to happen overnight. Just like building a party, it takes time, and there will be a lot of casualties, and there will be big losses. But if we can continue on this path and do pressure from inside and outside, we can win. But everybody's got to get involved. We don't win without the people. We need people power. So please, whatever your plan is, don't get discouraged and keep working, and we will win. Okay. More on Ocasio-Cortez. So last night, the voters at New York District 14 went to the polls in what would be an incredibly good night for progressive values. Democratic incumbent Joe Crowley, a man who was fourth most powerful Democrat in the House, was defeated by a large margin by a 28-year-old Justice Democrat named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, it's funny. Last night, reading the headlines from the Associated Press, he wouldn't even say her name. Fascinating. But it does show you how scared they are of this amazing victory. And it's not as if she won by 2 or 3 points. She won by a staggering 57 points to his 42. It wasn't even close. This was a blowout. And of course, this blowout is making corporate Democrats very, very nervous. Now, Cortez is a Democratic socialist. She's part of the DSA. Now, the DSA has been racking up wins all over the country in local races that were, not, in some cases, not very well covered. In some cases, very well covered. Now, she was also backed by Our Revolution. Our Revolution has a win rate of over 40% now in a lot of these races. I'm sure Politico is writing up an article right now correcting themselves on some of the recent articles about how Our Revolution is failing. But anyway, she was also backed by Senator Bernie Sanders. That, of course, is a lightning rod endorsement and is a major, major endorsement and lended her some well-needed name recognition. Now, Crowley, however, was backed by some of the more establishment candidates, and even one progressive. For example, Ro Khanna. Now, Ro Khanna is progressive on a lot of issues, but on this, he got a lot of blowback for doing an endorsement for Crowley. Now, there's a reason for that. Crowley had actually, when Ro Khanna was running his first race, had endorsed Khanna against the more establishment candidate. So I think it's more of a, well, I kind of owe him a little bit because he did help me out, and that was a big help. At the same time, Crowley is, as I mentioned before, the more establishment candidate, whereas Ocasio-Cortez is the progressive and a fellow to him, to his Justice Democrat. So Khanna ended up dual endorsing both candidates. So, look, if you want to criticize Ro Khanna for that, go ahead. But I think that him on the issues, he's still really good on those issues. But anyway, now, this is an amazing progressive win because she was basically talking about policy. Now, she ran on Medicare for All. That was one of her big issues. Also abolishing ICE. That's really important. Now, Crowley also said, Medicare for All. Yeah, I'm in favor of Medicare for All. Yeah, no, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to go sign on to Medicare for All because it's really, really important. But Crowley also took a lot of money from health insurance companies. So I think he went to that position because he wanted to appear more progressive, probably because his internal polling was likely horrible. As far as ICE goes, he wouldn't actually go to, yes, he would criticize ICE, but he was not progressive on that issue, as progressive as Ocasio-Cortez, and said, we just need to, to try to rein in ICE a little bit. Ocasio-Cortez was like, no, get rid of ICE. Gone. Abolish. Now, to be fair, look, Bernie Sanders is also not gone super progressive on that issue, to be fair, and it's fair to point that out. He's like, I wouldn't go so far as abolishing ICE, but we do need to have some reform. So her winning on that, having that stance and still winning on that issue, that's actually really, really important because I think that takes that issue more mainstream. Now, back to Crowley and his, I guess he was a little desperate because for one, I got something in my eye. Yeah. That's fascinating. So as far as Crowley goes, he took the unprecedented step of actually doing a debate with Ocasio-Cortez. Now, that's actually rare, but I think it's part due in part to the blowback that he got from sending a surrogate to a couple of his previous debates. Now, Crowley also outspent her by a great deal because most of his donors were very, very large, while Cortez actually had a majority of small donations. So I think this race is a big signal to the establishment that we're coming and that we can actually win. And Crowley was incredibly important. He raised a lot of money for the Democratic Party from Wall Street and from big corporations, and was in line to become the next, possibly become the next Speaker of the House. So this, of course, is making huge waves in the establishment. Now, Ocasio-Cortez, I read a statement from her after her win about how knocking on doors and sticking to the issues. Let's go to Crowley here. In his concession speech, he said, "I want to congratulate Ms. Ocasio-Cortez on her victory tonight. I look forward to supporting her and all Democrats this November. The Trump administration is a threat to everything we stand for here in Queens and the Bronx. And if we don't win back the House this November, we will lose the nation we love." Now, look, as far as concession speeches go, I think that's great. I hope he does support her. Because if he does, well, that's what actual unity looks like. Democrats, pay attention. Now, Cortez is, look, she's not only going to fight against Trump, of course, but she's going to fight for people and for good policy and against what the Democratic Party is currently doing. In fact, on Morning Joe earlier, she said this, quote, "We have to stick to the message, what we are proposing to the American people, not what we're fighting against. We understand that we're under an antagonistic administration, but what is a vision that is going to earn and deserve the support of working class Americans? And we need to be explicit in that vision and legislation, not just better, but what exactly is our plan? I think that's really the path forward. Getting into Twitter fights with the president is not exactly, I think, where we're going to find progress as a nation." She's absolutely right. Too many Democrats have wasted their time just getting into Twitter fights instead of actually fighting for policy that's going to defeat President Trump. That is populist, progressive policy, like the stuff that she actually ran on. Now, look, that's the path forward, Democrats. Pay attention. Wake up. People do not want platitudes or resistance, whatever that means. No, people want policy. Medicare for All polls 60%. Now, you guys can read polls, right? You can read that, oh, it turns out this policy is incredibly popular with our voters, and we could actually possibly win with this. You know how to read polls, but there are people out there, politicians, that ignore polls. But people, they want policy, they want platitudes, and Ocasio-Cortez and progressives, we want to do that. We want to focus on good policy. That's how you defeat Trump. That's how you fight Trump and the Republicans, by proposing better policies than what they and other corporate and the corporate Democrats happen to offer. Ocasio-Cortez is, I think, the future of the Democratic Party and progressive politics, and I congratulate her on her amazing win. And I think we're going to expect a lot of good things out of her in the future. Okay. Move on. Let's move on here. All right. Now, it didn't take long for a member of the so-called resistance to attack congressional nominee Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez after her amazing win over Democratic incumbent Joe Crowley. Now, this time, attacking her is the newly minted establishment hero, Steve Schmidt. Now, while appearing on an MSNBC panel discussion with Stephanie Ruhle, Schmidt said that Ocasio-Cortez was a, quote, dishonest progressive. Oh, well, this should be good, considering that Schmidt is a former Republican. So first we're going to go into Stephanie Ruhle, who is, of course, a centrist as well, talking about how this is terrible for the Democratic Party as a whole. Let's take a look.
You've got centrist, wealthy people who are willing to look the other way and take his lies for fact because it works for their bank accounts. Because they hear about far-left candidates winning the primaries and they worry, what's going to happen to my tax dollars? I'm going to believe Trump's lies because it's convenient for me.
Once upon a time in American politics, it was a business of persuasion. You would try to persuade people that your ideas were slightly better than the other side. It has become a game of incitement. And what Trump is doing is radicalizing American politics. And he is a beneficiary the more radical politics becomes. When it becomes a game of incitement between a far left who says everybody's going to have a government job, everybody's going to have daycare, everybody's going to have retirement, free school, free high school, free college education as we careen towards $30 trillion in debt. When we have dishonest progressivism, right? And we have dishonest Trumpism, an alienated middle that surrenders. They break their will to fight back. They become disenfranchised and hopeless about the idea that free market capitalism or liberal democracy can prevail in a radical era. That is the danger.
Well, this is the moment for the center to rise.
Oh, this is the moment for the center to rise. No. What she's talking about is something that I like to dub radical centrism. So what is radical centrism? It's basically trying to be in the middle of everything. Now, it doesn't matter how far right the Republicans go, the Republican Party, and they've gone incredibly far right. A radical centrist wants to get to the center of that and then proclaim themselves, even if they're massively right-wing, oh, no, we're the center, we're the reasonable people. And those people that used to be the far left or used to be actually just the normal left, they're far left. Oh, they're so crazy. I mean, the free college. Well, most European countries already do that. The free health care. Most other European countries actually do that, and they save a lot of money. Child care. I mean, who does child care? The United States is one of the only countries in the world that actually doesn't have child care that is affordable. On and on and on. I could go on so many different examples. But no. Being for those issues is being a dishonest progressive. Really. That's fucking rich. Look, here's who Steve Schmidt is. Steve Schmidt is a former Republican strategist. He's actually out there trying to lecture the left on what we should be running on. Hilarious. No, here's what the real danger is, right? People like Steve Schmidt. He's being incredibly dishonest. See, what Schmidt won't admit is that a lot of these policies are actually, number one, they're investments into the American people. And number two, a lot of these actually save money. For example, Medicare for All saves money over our current system that is strictly for profit. Well, how do they save money? They get rid of the profit motive that actually raises prices for the American people. We'd actually save trillions under a Medicare for All plan if we get rid of the insurance companies. But look, you know what's actually wasting money? And it's not the free college, which actually is a great investment into the American people. And when people come out of college without debt, guess what? They get jobs and they can actually go, they either get jobs or they create new businesses, which is also good for the economy, but they're actually they're able to get houses and they're actually able to be a part of the economy at large without a majority of their money going to debt servicing for those student loans. Get a clue, Steve Schmidt. Take an economics class that isn't Koch Heritage Foundation sponsored. Look, do you know what actually wastes money? War. That's what wastes money. Endless war. You know how much money we put into the military? And this is thanks to a lot of the neoliberals that also voted for this. Over $700 billion goes into war. The military has some of the biggest just wasteful programs, wasteful weapons, just all that money. And look, it doesn't go to the troops. Majority of that money doesn't go to the troops. It actually goes to defense contractors that line their pockets with billions and billions of dollars. That's a waste of money. We pay more for our military, we spend more for our military than the 10 biggest countries combined. Oh, but somehow we're not having a conversation about how much waste that is. No, we're having a conversation on giving people fucking health care that every other industrialized nation actually already has. Not only that, you know what else is a waste? Giving taxes to the richest people in the world, the richest corporations. You know why? Because they hoard the money either overseas or, in the case of the Trump tax cuts, by the way, they invested a lot of that money not in their workers, not in their companies, but they just bought back their own stock. Which does what? It inflates the stock market and makes the company seem more valuable to investors than it actually is. That creates a bubble in the stock market. Not very smart, because guess what? Bubbles happen to burst. And when that happens, really, really bad things happen to the economy. So, you want to talk about wastes of money. That's what's wasting money. Look, this argument is more, how are we going to pay for that? Coming from the right, except now he's apparently a liberal hero for quitting the Republican Party over Trump and his lack of decorum. Well, if he was truly disgusted by GOP policies, he would have quit during the disastrous Iraq War, or during the first round of gigantic tax cuts for the rich that caused a recession. He didn't, because that's who he is. Look, he's a Republican, he's a conservative at heart. What he did is instead, he brought a Sarah Palin. And Sarah Palin is, I think, one of the first steps that got us to Trump. Somebody who doesn't know a damn thing, railing against, it's the mainstream liberal media with their gotcha questions and facts. That's what started inching us towards President Trump. So, now Kyle Kulinski, and I love this, on Twitter, he hosts Secular Talk. He called him out on Twitter, and I love this tweet. He says, "Sniveling little weasel Steve Schmidt thinks that fighting for Medicare for all, free college, living wage, end of the wars, and drug war is equal to bombing 8 countries, ripping families apart, and torturing people because he's a world-class idiot." Look, he made a comparison between progressivism and Trumpism. That is not equal. They are not equal. Now, he responded to that by saying, "You make Trump possible. Look in the mirror. You see Trump staring back?" No. That's ridiculous and stupid. They are not the same. And I love the false equivalence there that he was trying to paint against Kyle and progressives as a whole. That's your hero of the resistance. Somebody who thinks fighting for good policy is the same as Trumpism. No. Here's what Schmidt is. He is a political hack. There's something courageous about his new democratic principles. He's a conservative. He's always been a conservative, and he'll always be a conservative. And conservatives don't have a place in a progressive movement. Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna talk about the disastrous Supreme Court ruling on the unions. I have some very interesting thoughts about this, very angry thoughts about this, actually. And then we're going to talk about Dave Rubin. Oh, you know it was coming. We'll be right back. Around the Nation. Stay right here. Oops. Who's hit that button? Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Run the Nation right here. TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share on YouTube. Also, please consider using the YouTube Super Chat if you have a message or a story suggestion that you want to do, because that, of course, goes to help the show, helps keep us on the air. All right. Another way to help support TYT Nation, of course, is to go to our Patreon, patreon.com/TYT Nation, so that I can continue to do the news and also give commentary. Okay. That's what that's about. Let's move on. Let's talk about the unions. We are getting to the bad, and then we will soon get to the ugly in today's show. Okay. Now, the Supreme Court has just dealt a major blow to public sector unions. Now, the court's conservative justices said in a 5-4 opinion that the state government workers who choose not to join a union cannot be compelled to pay a fair share of union dues for covering the cost of negotiating contracts. Now, the decision in Jonas versus AFSCME struck down the laws in California, New York, and 20 other mostly Democratic-leaning states. States that actually do care about union representation. Now, at the heart of this ruling was a 41-year-old court decision where the court said that non-union employees, when they were setting up public sector unions, should still have to have some sort of fee because they benefit from union contracts. Now, that makes sense. You don't want free riders, right? You want people with skin in the game to get the benefits of that union contract that, of course, they work hard for. Now, I've worked in union shops. I've worked in non-union shops. And from firsthand experience, I can tell you that the benefits of being in a union shop are actually really, really great. Turns out that I was treated better. I had better wages. I had cheaper health care. And even management treated us better. And for example, I remember me and a partner that I was working with, when we hit production goals, and trust me, we busted our asses for that, we reached production goal, and we ended up getting a pizza party. That was awesome. Now, let me compare that to the non-union shop that I worked in. I actually made less, worked a lot harder, had more expensive insurance, and when you hit a goal, well, you get a hearty pat on the back and now can you do more? So the reason that I bring up my personal experience in that is that to me that union due was actually worth it because I was getting the benefits of that union negotiated contract. Now, unfortunately, now you have people that want to be free riders, freeloaders, to that contract and still get the benefits but not actually pay in. And that's actually incredibly unfair. Now, overall, more than just the personal experience, the overall experience here, an impact that's going to happen is that you're going to have unions that are hurt even more because they're going to be more starved for funding. Now, in fact, a recent nonpartisan study predicted that this Supreme Court decision would eventually cause public employee unions to lose over 726,000 members from their ranks. Now, what's the impact? What's the effect of declining union membership? Well, we have some ideas. In fact, there's a historical trend that shows what happens when union membership declines. In fact, I've got a couple of images here to show you. Now, this, of course, shows unions and shared prosperity. Now, it shows the money of the amount of money that went to the top 10% during the height of unions and also during the decline of unions. For example, back in the 20s, it was incredibly low. And look at that. On the other side, here you had the share of top 10% getting a ton of money. Union membership gets high, and yes, that drops a little bit, that share of income going to the top 10%, but is actually still fairly high. And in some parts, you can see it was basically in tandem. And then, as union membership continued to decline, look at that. You have the share of money going to the top 10% exploding. I wonder if there's an impact. Gee, I don't know. Now, there's another chart that I want to show you here, and that is middle class income. So, oh wow, you can see as union membership goes down, so does middle class incomes. Oh, that's really, really strange. Huh. Well, look at that. It's almost as if unions are incredibly beneficial for the middle class. And that without them, money, which would have went to the middle class and in your pocket, ended up going to the top 10%. Weird. That's really strange how that works. Huh. It's like if you don't have representation in the workforce, then your boss gets to step all over you and steal the fruits of your productivity. And there's, of course, another chart, productivity versus wages, where productivity is way, way up, where wages stay stagnant. And it all happens about the time that unions declined in strength. Now, of course, conservatives cheered this ruling, including President Trump, who said on Twitter, Supreme Court rules in favor of non-union workers who are now, as an example, able to support a candidate of his or her choice without having those who control the union deciding for them. Big loss for the coffers of the Democrats. It's not just a loss for the Democrats, by the way. It's actually a loss for regular workers. See, here's the thing. He's actually wrong. Oh, well, surprise. Donald Trump's wrong about something. First of all, a union member could go and support any candidate that they want on their own. Because that money that was paid in union dues actually ends up going to negotiating contracts. And again, that 41-year-old ruling had them separate. If you didn't want your money to go to political activism on behalf of the union, you could say, I'm not interested in doing that, but you still had to pay something because you benefit from the contracts. And this decision, this Jonas decision, overrules that, overturns that. It says you don't have to pay anything at all. Disastrous. But look, here's the thing. If you really wanted to solve that problem of union money going to the Democrats, which I actually do, I don't believe that there should be union money in politics. I don't believe that there should be corporate money in politics. I think that there should be no money in politics, and everything should be publicly funded so that every candidate gets the same amount of money. And guess what? When that happens, politicians can actually run on their ideas. I know that's a crazy concept, but I believe in that. And so maybe you should have been in favor of getting money out of politics. But of course, the conservative Supreme Court actually wanted to get more money into politics. And Donald Trump, I remember Donald Trump on the campaign trail saying, oh, money in politics. It's the worst. You could buy people and they do whatever the hell you want. Well, now Trump doesn't give a goddamn shit. Why? Because he never did. Now, here's the thing, right? Look, I don't want union money. I don't want corporate money. Which, by the way, corporate money, as I just mentioned, is still there and absolutely has dwarfed union spending by orders of magnitude. So it's not even it wasn't even an even playing field between union money and corporate money in elections. So don't mistake that as something being on par, because they absolutely were not. I mean, for example, even one Koch brother, right, is worth about 515,000 union workers when it comes to political spending. And the Koch brothers, nobody says anything about the right on the Koch brothers. No, they support what the Koch brothers are doing and how much money that they're spending. Whereas honest, principled progressives, they'll look at people like I said, they're just the Koch brothers and their spending, but they'll also look like people like George Soros and be like, I actually don't want your money in politics either. I don't want any of your money. I don't want Haim Saban's money in politics. I don't want any other conservative donor or liberal donor. I don't want any donors in politics. I don't want any money in politics. I want to get it all gone. So we have to get it. We have to eliminate it. Now, here's the thing, right? They used this ruling. They actually used the First Amendment for this ruling. which is hilarious and also really sad, because what this is based on is the idea that money is speech, right? Now, states and public sector unions, they said, may no longer be able to extract agency fees from non-consenting employees. Now, and they're saying, look, the employees can consent for their speech, i.e. money, to be used for political causes, so that's why we're overturning this rule. But here's the thing, those employees still benefit. It's not about free speech, it's about workers' rights. They should have to pay something, because if they don't, then they're freeloaders. Now, conservatives, of course, they don't like that. They hate contributing to the greater good. Even if they themselves reap the benefits, they would rather keep the benefits for themselves and screw everyone else over. It's all about being greedy and fucking your fellow American over. That is the conservative ideology. Fuck you, I got mine. And I think it's obvious in a lot of the policies that we see coming from the right. But look, this is disastrous for the American worker, this decision. We've already faced stagnant wages and loss of benefits as the top continues to get even more money. Now that leads me to Justice Elena Kagan, who wrote in her dissent, quote, there is no sugarcoating today's opinion. The majority overthrows a decision entrenched in this nation's law and its economic life for over 40 years. As a result, it prevents the American people, acting through their state and local officials, from making important choices about workplace governance. And it does so by weaponizing the First Amendment in a way that unleashes judges now and in the future to intervene in economic and regulatory policy. Weaponizing the First Amendment. That is absolutely what they're doing. And again, oh, no, money is speech. No, money is not speech. You're not talking to a politician when you bribe them. You're bribing them. And that goes for unions and corporations as well. They both bribe politicians. Now, in the union's case, it's to get better union representation. So it at least somewhat helps the workers, unlike what a lot of corporate spending does. But look, again, the whole idea that money is speech is absolutely ridiculous. What we need to do is, and this is not going to happen for a very, very long time. I'm betting that right now. That is unless we can get a constitutional amendment in order to get money out of politics, because that's what we have to do. We have to end the idea that money is speech and that corporations are people with speech rights, and that would dismantle, essentially reverse this position. Now, as far as negotiating contracts, as I said before, they should be able to negotiate contracts, and people need to have skin in the game. There's a cost, and there are tangible benefits. Even if you don't pay, you end up getting those, and that's why this is so incredibly unfair. But the whole point of this ruling was to hurt unions, to help corporations steal more of our labor, put it into their pockets, instead of ours, where it actually belongs, because we're the ones who actually did the work. What we need to do is we need a resurgence of labor in this country. Workers need to fight back. We need to assert our rights to fair representation in the workplace. If not, we just might be forced to take over the workplace and run it for the benefit of all workers. Now, if that sounds scary, it should. Because we're tired of getting stepped on by corporate America. We're tired of getting stepped on by the courts. We're tired of getting stepped on by politicians who don't represent us. And I think it's about time that we do something about it. Okay. Let's go to the ugly. Okay. This is not something that I've done before, but I think I wanted to cover it today because I thought it was interesting. Okay. And during a segment about Milo Yiannopoulos on the Young Turks main show, co-host Anna Kasparian finally addressed the issue of Dave Rubin. Watch.
And so I want to address one other thing because I think it's important. Media, journalism, all of that, right, is important. And I'm not saying that because of what we do. I think that it's incredibly important to fact check the people that you have on your show. And that's not because I'm a fan of arguing or debating with your guests. It's just important that if you have a platform and you're allowing someone to say whatever it is that they want to say, you don't want half-truths, misinformation, lies to get out there in the public. But there's this whole notion now that it's a very intellectual thing to just allow people to come on your show and say whatever they want without challenging them. That's what real journalist is. I mean, that's a real intellectual. No, it's lazy. It's because you don't know anything. It's because you're nothing more than an intellectual lightweight, okay? And a perfect example of that is Dave Rubin. So I've been quiet about Dave Rubin for years, but I know Dave Rubin probably better than anyone else in this company because we were very close friends, okay? Went to dinner at his house every weekend until all of a sudden he's not liberal anymore. All of a sudden, after getting some funding from the Koch brothers, he's now a libertarian.
Ooh, okay, so that's fun already. So look, Anna calls out Dave Rubin and says, look, maybe you should actually challenge your guests. I agree with that 100%. In fact, there isn't anything that she said that isn't true. For example, the funding about being a libertarian. Now, look, I don't have a problem with you being a libertarian. I just disagree with you vehemently about some of your positions. But I have friends that are libertarian, I have family that's libertarian, and I disagree with them on a lot of issues, and that's fine. But this isn't about Dave being a libertarian. It's about why he became a libertarian, and that, of course, has to do with money. Now, back in September 21st, 2016, Dave Rubin and Learn Liberty announced a partnership together. Now, what is Learn Liberty? Well, it turns out they are a libertarian think tank that releases videos that espouse libertarian values. Now, they were launched by the Institute for Humane Studies, which is a nonprofit organization that engages with students and professors throughout the United States. Okay. Now, one of the board of directors for the Institute of Humane Studies happens to be Charles G. Koch. So what Anna is saying is that, look, Dave Rubin was a progressive. He was one of us until he partnered up with Learn Liberty, which is funded by the Koch brothers. Ergo, he is funded by the Koch brothers. So, and now, of course, suddenly he's a classical liberal who is very, very interested in free market ideas. Well, that's a strange transformation. Okay. Now, full context here. I used to watch Dave Rubin. He used to be progressive on a lot of issues. Not so much when it comes to Israel-Palestine. He's always been very, very conservative. He's actually always taken the Zionist position in favor of Israel when they were, bombing innocent people, etc. Well, now he's taken that to, of course, a whole new level and has become incredibly conservative in everything else. Now, here's the thing, right? I believe that he was progressive on most issues at the time because he believed that there was money in being progressive. Now, that goes to another of Anna's arguments against Rubin, is that he was basically just doing this for the money. In fact, let's take a look at that video.
Dave Rubin sells it as, I'm far more intellectual, and as a result, I refuse to engage in a debate or an argument. I allow people to make their case on my show. No, you're lazy. He was lazy when he worked here. He's lazy now with his ridiculous show where he proves time and time again that he doesn't know anything. And why do I know he's lazy? Why did he really leave the Young Turks? Can I please finally tell the truth about why he left the Young Turks? He wanted to make a 6-figure salary to host a 30-minute-a-week show when everyone here, because we work for an independent news company, was getting paid far less while working 12-hour days. That's why Dave Rubin left the company. And now all of a sudden he's getting funded by the Koch brothers, and all of a sudden his opinions are very different. He has no political identity. He is not an honest actor. He is not an intellectual. He is a fraud. Plain and simple, and he's giving platforms to people like Milo Yiannopoulos on his crappy show. That's who Dave Rubin is.
Damn. So, look, 6 figures for a 30-minute show a week. I could see how that wouldn't fly. I mean, you know how much we make in independent media, especially progressive media? We don't make a whole lot. There's no money here. This is not a good place to go if you want to make a lot of money. And Dave Rubin found that out the hard way. Oh, it turns out that I actually can't make a lot of money in progressive media and working for small independent companies. Where do I go from here? Oh, right. The Koch brothers. Well, they pay a lot of money. Look, here's the thing. She's basically saying Rubin is a sellout. Well, that's what happens. You go and you get paid a lot of money, and that changes your opinion. Well, that is the essential. That is essentially what happened with Rubin. Again, progressive on a lot of issues, and it turns out I'm a classical liberal now that I've been working with this libertarian think tank that funds me. Oops, I didn't know. No, what you are is you're a sellout. Okay, look, there's no money in being progressive. There is a lot of money in being conservative. There's actually also a lot of money for being centrist, by the way. But there is no money. There's very little money in progressivism. So that's the truth of it, right? And so that means that we do this because we actually care about the issues. We actually care about policy. People like Rubin, who are in it for the money, well, they don't care about policy, and it shows. Again, he never challenges his guests, and that was the biggest problem. Sam Seder, for example, continues to point out where he doesn't challenge his guests. He doesn't challenge anybody that comes on a show, even if they're saying wildly anti-Semitic things, which is what happened during the Milo Yiannopoulos interview. Oh, no, the Jews run everything. They run the media. They run all that. They run the banks. No, they don't. That is wildly anti-Semitic and not true. In fact, look, there's been a lot of people that have been calling him out for quite some time. You had Majority Report, as I mentioned, Sam Seder, Secular Talk, Humanist Report, The Rational National. They've all pointed out Dave's hypocrisy. And for the longest time, TYT wasn't chiming in. Which is funny because Rubin had been taking pot shots at TYT all along for the past couple of years. But finally, of course, something had to break, something had to snap, and finally, they admit what was actually going on and what actually happened. And I think that was great. It just shows you that Rubin, he's no intellectual. He's been outed as a fraud and somebody apparently only interested in a quick buck, who has no political ideology, no core. Somebody who is the epitome of a sellout. And as Anna said, that's apparently who Dave Rubin really is. I can't stand people that sell out. I really can't. Okay. All right. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Man, interesting show. We're going to have the Milo Yiannopoulos story. Well, I'm going to save that for tomorrow. So stay tuned for that tomorrow right here, TYT Nation. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I do have a super chat that I want to read that I saw come by earlier today. They said, RB says, keep up the good work, Jeff. Hello, chat people. Well, hello to you too, RB. And thank you so much for supporting independent progressive media. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you guys want to support independent progressive media, please consider going to our Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. And of course, participating in future live streams using the super chat function. All right. So anyway, please like and share the stream if you haven't already, and we'll be back tomorrow. Thank you, guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see you guys tomorrow.